Thank you for listening to the BjjBrick Podcast. We'll be bringing you Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and good times. We hope to flatten your Jiu-Jitsu learning curve, help you get the most out of your grappling ability, and meet your goals both on and off the mat.
Welcome back to the BjjBrick Podcast. This is going to be episode 290, and we're going to talk about Top Game, not Top Golf. I know a lot of you guys are excited about Top Golf, but we're talking about Top Game. We're talking about the smashing pressure, getting on top, forcing your will on people, and we're going to have a good time. And I've got my co-hosts, Byron Jabara and Joe Thomas. How are you two guys today?
Man, I'm doing good, Gary. It's good to be on here with you.
Awesome. And Byron, are you there?
Yep, back on top, Gary.
On top. There
Doing
we go.
Good. We're excited about this topic. This is the last episode of the month, and we like to have that be a topic episode where the three of us will, dive in deep, or a little deeper than usual, and talk about a certain topic. And I thought, Top Game, who doesn't enjoy a good discussion about, playing a little bit of top game versus bottom or bad position or submissions or whatever, but talking about just, passing guards and, like Gary says, pressure, different top positions. It's going to be amazing. Well, it'll be pretty good.
Yeah. Speaking of amazing, you all need to check out Byron's audiobook, Your First Year in BJJ. It's not 1 hour, not 2 hours, but 2.5 hours of content. Basically walking you through everything you're going to encounter in your first year, which we feel is your toughest year. And if we can give a little bit of advice, let's put it this way. If Byron can give a little bit of advice, because I have nothing to do with this, if Byron can give you some advice to help you make it through your first year, enjoy that first year much more, get more out of it, tips for learning, it'll make that year much better. Make it so you'll enjoy jiu-jitsu for the long term. Stick with it. So check it out. We have a link to it in the show notes. Audiobook, Your First Year in BJJ. It is getting great reviews. I think it's even getting better reviews than this podcast itself. And most of we've talked about this podcast as a award-winning, number 3 ranked or number 2 ranked, I can't remember, podcast in the nation. And but the audiobook is just as good, if not better.
Are you sure that was just nationwide, Gary? I thought that might have been worldwide.
Worldwide, yeah, probably worldwide.
I think so.
Yeah.
In the martial arts category, according to one poll.
Yeah. Hey, that's the only poll we look at, Byron. Well, I know, Byron, you look at a lot of different polls, but that's the only poll I check out.
Well, that's good to hear. You gotta pick the one, I guess, Gary.
There's Gary. There's Gary going on and on with our jokes again.
I didn't mean that to be a joke. Byron took it the wrong way.
Giggity. All right, guys. We have an off the mat lesson every episode. We like to either take something on or off the mat and discuss how it could relate to jiu-jitsu. And the theme, the last couple has been firefighting. And Gary, last episode, asked how I would try to save somebody, or specifically Gary, who is trapped in a bedroom and his house is on fire. Is that about right?
That's right. Definitely right.
Okay. So this will be from the perspective of somebody who shows up at like the first unit on scene. And it's really important if there's somebody else already outside, or if our dispatchers have talked to somebody and got more information, that is a lot of help. I'd like to get a quick interview of anybody who is like standing outside and really freaking out, like the homeowner. Or if you can find somebody who's not a neighbor looking at this thing. Even neighbors aren't bad to talk to. But generally, we get there, I'm putting on some gear and still getting ready, not just ready to just barge in the door. And so I'll stand near somebody. I'll ask them some questions. Is anybody in the house? Where's the fire? What's the where? And if the fire is like downstairs, how do you get downstairs? And these sort of questions. And the very first one is anybody still in the house? And in this situation, it's gonna be Gary's still in the house. He's in the bedroom, and that's great to know. But I'm gonna say, show me which window is Gary's, or where you think he is. and they're going to take me over to a particular window. It could be ground floor or second or Gary. Which floor are we on here? Ground floor or second?
Ground floor.
Ground floor. Great. If it was second, I'd grab a ladder and it would be okay. But so ground floor. I'm gonna tell somebody. I need to tell the crew that I'm going to do something that's a little unusual, because typically we don't have people trapped in fires. Most of the time they get out. But because of this situation, Gary has not been able to get himself out of this house. I'm going to go through the window and try to save him, versus go through the front door and try to save him. And I'm not even going to take a hose line. It's just going to be going and get Gary, because without him, the podcast would probably be a little shorter and probably a little bit funnier. Anyway, so you go up there, get all my stuff on, get it all ready, 100% ready to go in, break the window. We have some tools that are very good at breaking windows. Clear it, pop in the window, and then go in, and hopefully Gary's in there, but close the door to the bedroom. Buys quite a bit of time, and then get Gary, get him out the window, and he's safe. The other option is to go through the front door, possibly fighting some fire along the way, and find Gary in that bedroom, and then either get him out the way we came, which sometimes can be very hot and tricky, or break the window and get him out through that way. But the preferred method most of the time is called VESS. Vent, enter, and then search. So you vent the window, you break the window, you get in, you enter the room. Now, if this is done and you don't close that bedroom door, it just draws smoke and eventually fire rather quickly through the bedroom, and it cooks everything in there. So you don't just want to break the window and piddle around outside there and then eventually get in. When the window's broken, you've got a little timer going to get this problem solved. And that's really kind of what we're looking at for the off the mat lesson is well, I didn't explain that. Sorry. The problem with going through the front door is it might be a little quicker if you knew the house. But because I've got somebody who says Gary's probably in this room, this window right here, there's zero chance of me getting lost between outside and that window. Now, if they say, go in, take a left, it's going to be your third door on the right, or what, that is very difficult to do in a smoky situation. And I could easily take a wrong turn or not find it. And so it's such an advantage to go directly from the outside to the room you want to be in and then back out. And it's quick too. So it's just a direct way to get the problem solved. And like in jiu-jitsu, sometimes we talk about having a funnel to get the match or get the roll where you want it to be, and the most direct path is gonna lead you to a lot more efficiency with your success. So if the only way I'm going to submit Gary is by some funky north-south choke or
Henway.
like a north-south Henway, first I have to either get top or sweep him, and then possibly pass his guard, and then go from side control to that position. Quite a bit of things. Not that those are all bad, but if I'm going to attack him directly from my guard, it's just a more direct thing that puts him in trouble a little sooner. And it's just like a direct attack versus an indirect attack. Direct would be go right through the window, get the job done as quick as possible, with less chances of room for error. Because anytime that Gary can mess up my plan for attacking, let's say he sweeps me. Okay, well, the odds of me getting north-south are pretty slim if I'm on the bottom, or unless he does it to me. But there's just less problems to run into if it's a simple plan. And that's the point of having a VESS, a vent or search attack to save somebody is super simple. You know the window, you go in, you get him, and you get him outside. And if you don't know, like a real simple be takedowns. If you're good at takedowns, use that in every match, unless they pull guard on you. But it's just right there. It's right now. There's no confusion getting to that point. If you hate passing people's guards, but you should be pulling guard. That's a lot easier than having to pass someone's guard if you're terrible at it. It's just get the match where you want it to be as quick as possible, and I think that's an easy way to start things, if at all possible, because you have another person who's trying to do the same thing to you.
No, it's a good life lesson, Byron. While you're wrapping it up there, I was thinking about it in a more general term, how you can apply that same concept to all of your jiu-jitsu. And in my mind, the way you do that is by really sharpening your takedowns, passes, and sweeps, so that you're going directly to a dominant position and not getting hung up in some type of a guard or something. You're talking about the most direct route to a dominant position. If you're taking your opponent down and you can avoid getting hung up in some sort of half guard, that's a way more direct route to where you want to go. When you sweep your opponent, if you could sweep straight into the mounted position, that's about as direct of a path as you can get. But at least if you can get side control, not hump in a guard. So yeah, work out those things, and then this will apply across the board to all of your jiu-jitsu.
Byron, I want to give you a hand. I really like how you took the vest, took your job, and made it into jiu-jitsu, and I really like it where you're talking about find out where I'm at, the quickest path, the easiest path to a dominant position, to a submission. Saving me, let's equate that to a submission. You go from the outside, you just go in, and then you come right back out. Versus, like you said, if you have to go in that front door, you're going to run into so many different obstacles. You're going to run into my stairway. You don't know whether to come up and down, go up the stairs or go down the stairs, and that's going to be like somebody's frames. You got to take care of the frames. And you pass the frames and you get upstairs and there's 3 doorways. You don't know which doorway you're going in. That's like somebody's underhook. They're already coming up. They're getting a tight waist grab. They're looking to sweep you. So if you just don't take the most direct route, as you said, funnel them down to where you're at, where you have your opponent in your most advantageous position, you're going to run into a lot more obstacles. That's going to make this job much harder. So I really like the way you explained that, and it's pretty cool. Congratulations, Byron. That one I didn't know if I could get, but that was awesome.
Well, thanks, Gary, and you kind of inspired that one with your question from last week.
Yeah. Hey, I do have another question.
Every time.
No,
yes,
but
well, maybe this will be next week.
This made me think of another firefighting thing. And I'm not a firefighter. I have no clue what firefighters do besides talking to Byron and a couple of his buddies. But back in the day, Byron, when I was in elementary school, and I wonder if Joe, because we're kind of the same age, if Joe dealt with this, firefighters used to come to our school and talk to us at about, stop, drop, and roll, and, whatever else there is. But they would always give us a sticker. And we used to go home and we'd put this sticker on our window. And it used to tell the firefighters, that there's a kid in this room or there's somebody sleeping in this room, kind of like what you were saying, you talk to the neighbors. How come I don't ever see that anymore? It don't seem like it's done. It seems like a pretty good idea.
Yeah, I don't know. I would say that we've gotten away from that here in Wichita. If we see that, we'll look for it. A lot of times they'll say, 2 kids and a puppy or something like that. But I don't know why. Maybe people move and the signs get confusing and they leave them up, or I don't know. My preferred method is to grab somebody and ask them, because even neighbors know how many people live there typically, and we always assume people are in the house regardless.
We're trying to know where our bedrooms are, because a lot of times you don't hang out with the neighbors unless it's your neighbors. You might not know them. You just wave to them.
Yeah, that's true, and it's
because I definitely don't invite my neighbors in my bedroom.
Hey guys, am I the only one of the 3 of us that's cynical and paranoid? I'm not putting a sticker on a window that tells anybody
maybe that's
my
why.
kids are asleep.
Yeah,
honestly, I wouldn't.
That makes sense now. That does make a lot of sense now, Joe. I see that. That does make a lot of sense. You don't want predators to know where your kids are. I think Joe's the smart one out of all of us.
Joe
figured it out. Yep.
I'm
Joe, I want to give you the hand.
Oh man!
But no, I bet that is the reason. I bet that really is the reason right there. That makes sense.
Yeah. Think about custody disputes and predators. Yeah, that's my guess.
Yep.
Man, we got some smart people on this show.
Well, Joe,
We got a smart person on the show. Yep, there we go. So a little teamwork on that one. Thank you, Joe. Gary, what do we have for the quote of the week?
Well, I always get a little nervous when you ask me what we have for the quote because I feel like you're setting me up. But
Gary, hold on a minute because this is worth. What are you talking about?
Every time you ask me to read the quote, it's by some fake name, and I say it, and then you guys start laughing.
Like what?
You funnel me down the wrong path. What do you have? IP Freely one time, and it was the letter I, period P, and then the last name was Freely, and I said it, and you guys laughed, and I know you got me more than once. So, but I think I'm okay reading the quote. This week we have a.
So are you willing to say that there's nothing suspicious about this quote?
We'll find out.
Okay.
But, this quote is from Dale Carnegie. Remember that a person's name is to that person the sweetest and most important sound in any language. Yeah, I don't think it's a joke, Byron. I don't see it. Maybe it is. Nobody started laughing right now.
We're laughing right now. What does that mean?
I don't necessarily believe it. I don't think hearing my name is the most important sound in a language.
Well, you don't think if you heard your name every week and highlighted in some public fashion that would, you don't think that'd be a good thing?
It could be a good thing. It could be a bad thing. I could be highlighted because I'm a predator. I could be highlighted for something else.
But Joe and Gary, when you
I
guys
think I'd rather hear money, food.
But when
jiu-jitsu.
you hear if somebody says Gary and you're in a large room, do you turn your head?
I turn my head, yeah. But that's not the sweetest.
Well, with a name like Gary.
Yeah. That's not the sweetest thing. And I don't know if it's the most important. I think the most important sound may be breathing. That means I'm alive.
Man, Gary, you usually don't have an issue with the quotes.
Gary, I think the most important sound is gurgling because that means I know I've almost got the choke.
You got the back. You got the hooks in. You got the choke. Yeah, perfect. I like that. Gurgling or tap, 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 tap. You're in a good position.
Well, I think this quote comes from, and I could be wrong, but like the book How to Win Friends and Influence People. If it comes if somebody's new to the gym and you could remember their name and you to see him next week, hey Gary, welcome back. Does that not sound like good? Does that not make you feel welcome?
Man, going down that path, you're funneling us down that path, Byron, that is great. Because, I've talked about that. You've talked about it. Joe's talked about it. We want to grow jiu-jitsu, and it's hard being the new guy to come to jiu-jitsu. And it's awkward because you probably don't know anybody. You don't know what you're getting into. But if somebody remembers your name, that is definitely you go into a place that's unfamiliar, you don't know anybody, and somebody calls out your name. That would be the most sweetest and most important sound right there. Yeah, I agree with that context.
That's awesome. Gary.
But okay, so let's say I'm in jail. They just put me in jail and I'm walking
something we talk about a lot on this show. I don't know why.
Through the pod, and I hear my name, and it's from the leader of the jailhouse gang. I don't know if I'd want to hear my name at that point. I might get a little nervous at that point.
But it does, you could take this to one example or one extreme or the other. Like what if they're waiting to call out lottery numbers and they call out your name, Gary, or something like that. But if you meet somebody and they remember your name, that makes you feel good.
That does make you feel good.
Because, hearing your name, we all do this. My name is a little more rare than your guys', a little bit, maybe a lot more rare. Byron. When I hear Byron, 99.999% of the time, someone's asking me something. It's rare that I am in the same room with another Byron. Joe, you probably have, I don't know, maybe when Joe was a kid, he had, school, and maybe you too, Gary, you go by like JT or something like that instead of Joe because you got three other Joes in there.
I don't think anybody called me JT.
Why not?
It would have been cool if they did, though.
Because those kids are cool.
No, I was with you, Byron. I really never had any other Garys. I can think of two other Garys that I grew up with, and then two Garys that I worked with. So
what you do right away is you beat up the other Gary, and then everybody knows which Gary not to mess with.
Well, the problem was most of these Garys I knew were before I did jiu-jitsu, so I couldn't really beat anybody up.
Well, Gary, I picked this quote special for you.
Why, thank you.
You're welcome. And now I'll play a little clip I have edited of Gary getting pranked on since the beginning of the year. So sit back, Gary, and enjoy. This prank goes back to the very first episode of the new year, episode 283. This is where we discover the idea. We have a quote from Mary, and Gary makes a big deal about the name rhyming. Let's go ahead and play the little clip.
We have Mary Pickford, and I guess I'm taking this one because Mary rhymes with Gary. So
that's exactly what we were thinking.
Yeah, so I thought that should go to me. But this quote goes with kind of what we're talking about.
So that's the beginning of the quote. Very next episode, 284, we decided to go full on Gary Quotes and see where it took us. Here's our very first one. Well, let's get on with the quote of the week here. The quote is from Gary Vaynerchuk. Without hustle, your talent will only get you so far. A little later on, Gary, you got a comment about the quote and who it's by. But that was a quote from Gary Vaynerchuk. Guys, gotta hustle.
What a great name.
Vaynerchuk. Yeah, you're right.
I was thinking the Gary part.
Oh. Episode 284, Gary Vaynerchuk quote were great, but we run into a little problem when Gary wants to suggest the quote for next week, and it's not by a Gary. So I really have to insist that we talk about this line right now and bury it in episode 284. That way next week we could have a Gary quote. So good try, Gary. You had no idea, but you about ruined our Gary quote prank.
I think we got a good quote for next week.
What?
You don't have to be the best. You just have to be enough. And on that day, I was enough.
We should do that right now.
Well, I was going to talk about it, but then I was like, maybe we'll save it for next week.
Talk about it. Well, okay. Bring it up, Gary. Well, if we would have used that quote, we wouldn't have been able to use this quote by a Gary the very next week. The paradox is that sometimes you have to get worse before you get better. And that's by Gary Mack, and Gary Mack wrote the famous book Mind Gym, An Athlete's Guide to Inner Excellence. And as we were wrapping up the quote, of course, Gary, you got a comment about the guy's name.
Yeah, that's an interesting quote. And the guy's got an awesome first name.
You're right about that, Gary.
He's got two first names, actually. That's pretty cool.
But if you're interested in this sort of mental game, all right, this next one I attributed to you, Gary, because you changed the quote slightly. The quote that I'm familiar with is sticks in a bundle are not easily broken. But the Gary way to say this quote is sticks in a bundle are unbreakable, which I have never heard that, but I've only heard it, I guess, from you. Well, also, Gary, you don't only just bring the good transitions there. Our quote of the week is from Gary.
Yeah. Well, you think about it. When we're lost on the island, we need to be able to use the natural resources. We use sticks to build huts. We use sticks to make fire. We use sticks to make spears for self-defense and to feed ourselves. And, one, I thought a really good quote that I saw this week, sticks in a bundle are unbreakable.
Let's put that unbreakable bundle aside and take a look at the next week's quote. Here we go.
We have a quote this week from D. Gary Young. I was told that I couldn't do it. I was stupid. I was crazy. But because I believed in my dreams, I accomplished them.
All right, to keep this going strong, let's keep moving. Let's see what we had next week.
Okay, guys, so that brings us to our quote of the week by Garry Kasparov, notable chess player. It says, attackers may sometimes regret bad moves, but it is much worse to forever regret an opportunity you allowed to pass you by. And I suppose this this quote has an application both to in the moment when you're doing jiu-jitsu and bigger picture. Certainly, especially competition, maybe it's a real close match or you're down by a few points.
And, of course, it wouldn't be the same without a little Gary name confusion play. I'll go ahead and throw that clip in. That's a good one, Gary. Are you
talking to me or are you talking to Gary Kasparov?
Either one. All right, this will be the last one here from Gary Robbins. Get Gary to read it here. And from here, running out of Gary's. But these were some good quotes. And it was kind of fun sliding them underneath the detection of our very own Gary.
Kind of leads us to a good quote we have this week from Gary Robbins. Any day above ground is a good day, son. I don't think anyone who is given another shot at life would ever find issue with a rainy day again.
All right, that was a lot of fun. It spans from episode 283 to 289. If you're interested in hearing those as they actually happen, go back and listen to the quotes there towards the beginning of the show. A lot of good stuff in there from the Garys. Gary!
Yes.
Which one?
The crazy thing is I never realized how many Gary quotes were back to back to back to back to back.
Well, that was kind of the point, I guess. Let's see if we can get away with it. And it became where, it was getting longer and longer. And I was like, I have all these little clips saved up. And I was like, we got to end this thing because I don't want this to be like an hour-long old quotes that are from Gary.
Yeah. But, real quick, I know you guys have all heard about that. The English actor, Gary Oldman,
Sure.
was born March 21st, 1958. And I would like to bring in a quote. He said, "You choose your friends by their character and your socks by their color." And the one thing that I have really messed up on is the first part. I have chosen my friends not by their character. And I'm going to have to now choose friends by their character.
Not by their color. What?
Of my socks. I basically said I have two less friends now.
Oh, I see, Gary.
Because their character is not good enough.
Well, we know you're quite the character. Also, in one of those shows, we did the Larry, Curly, and Moe, and you cued in on rhyming with Larry. Didn't clip it, so I was like, I can't go through and edit this thing anymore than I already have. But, and then look at the quote of the week, Gary. This week.
What do we got this week?
Well, we already covered it, but you talk about your name and how important it is to you.
Oh, yeah.
It
didn't have a Gary in
it. Didn't have a Gary, but it remember that a person's name is to that person the sweetest and most important sound in any language, Gary. I don't know. Was it the craziest prank by any means? But
no, it was good.
It's been fun slipping in Gary quotes and then trying to find Gary quotes. Man, we're all over the place.
You know what I like to say? What other people think of me is none of my business. And that's another quote by Gary Oldman.
Man, I didn't know there was quite a library of Gary Oldman quotes.
Well, Gary Oldman, I like this one too. I rarely ask to play the smartest man in the room. You guys have figured that one out.
It was a bit of a stretch because one of the ones in the middle was the six in a bundle are unbreakable, and as far as I could tell, that's not how the quote originally was said. So if you look on their website, I credit that to you, Gary, by pioneering that one. Because
isn't it also just a proverb as opposed to a quote?
Oh, well, the quote if Gary says it, but it's a proverb
Yeah. Yeah.
Very nicely done. We should have a proverb of the week instead of the quote. Break that down. Well, Gary,
just break it on down for me.
Okay. You kind of even this episode we're a little cautious about reading the quote because we were worried we were going to throw something weird at you.
That's why I got here late. I thought something crazy was going on.
We had time to plan. Well, what's going on next is we're going to talk about the top game. And I figured the easiest way to start this would just be to share some of our own experiences with, playing jiu-jitsu and our feelings about top game. I'll start. I played guard primarily, white belt, blue belt, purple belt. Purple belt, I was like a guard guy. Like I always pull guard. And then around brown belt level, I started learning the pass guard a lot better and really enjoyed that. Now, as a black belt, I prefer to be on top. I enjoy trying to pass a guard more than I enjoy trying to sweep somebody or submit them from my guard. So it's kind of changed, and I think that's pretty normal for some people to kind of have one preference or another and have it switch kind of seasonally, over the years. Joe, tell me a little bit about your top game or bottom game history or preference.
Well, I would prefer to play a top game, but it takes a lot of energy to get a takedown, or even if you're starting from your knees, it sometimes takes a lot of energy to get that top position. And so honestly, I often concede the top position and, kind of try and be patient and let my training partner or my opponent spend some energy and try some things and then look for an opportunity to reverse position from there. So that's how I usually end up on top. And when I get on top, I like top side control or top half guard, and I work from there usually. How about you, Gary?
I'm kind of with you, Joe. I started off when I was a little bit younger, being a top position guy, and had some success there. And then I started working bottom game just to round out my game. And as I started getting older, I run in a situation with you, Joe. I sometimes just feel it's easier to settle for the bottom game and work from there. And I've kind of now tailored my game to it. But here in the last couple of years, I've really been working a lot more, top game pressure, so I keep going back and forth. I really prefer the bottom game. But if everything was equal, I would, try to smash every time, try to be on top. But I just think as I get a little bit older, the bottom game allows me to relax a little bit more, makes me stay a little bit safer. And when I say safer, injury-wise, and, I do have a lot of submissions that I can go for that are, kind of my favorite submissions from those positions.
So the top game, to me, is less energy intensive to maintain versus it's a little bit of energy spent at the beginning to get it. If we're starting from our knees, I don't mess with it at all. If Gary and I start from the knees, he will either just sit down and start from butterfly guard, or I'll do the same. Like we both don't do the same thing. So within the first 3 seconds, somebody has decided, I'll play bottom. You can play top. I discourage any, fighting from your knees for a top position. That's not you might as well stand up if you have room in the class to do that, because it's just like a kind of a waste of time and energy really to fight from your knees, when the correct answer would be to stand up or to not fight from your knees. And just the only reason why we're starting on our knees anyway sometimes is because it's just safer. It's safer for the people around us to not get landed on, and takedowns are one of the more injury-prone activities we do. So even if you want to play top, if you're starting from your knees, I still don't urge you to push and kind of be that person who refuses to play bottom ever. Do you think most people have a preference, guys?
I do. I think most people have a preference, something that they feel more comfortable with. They have more paths to their submissions. And I do think learning the top game is probably the most important. That's kind of how I feel. I think that's the way you should start. But I do think most people have a preference.
I wonder if most people have a preference, though, kind of based on what they were forced into by the culture of their gym. If you're in a gym with a bunch of guys that are top players and good at takedowns, you're just by default going to get better at your bottom game earlier, and then you're going to say, oh, well, that's what I prefer because I'm good at it. And then the next evolution may be that you're rolling with a bunch of guard players, and now you're playing a top game, and 6 months later or a year later you might say, oh, I prefer top game. I wonder if that's the case.
I bet that is, Joe. I bet, because you're coming into this game, you have no clue what you're doing or how you're going to go about jiu-jitsu, and you're going to pick up from what your teammates, what your coach teaches you. And normally your school is going to fall in line with your coach. If you have a big pressure, as I know, Byron, your school is a really big top game pressure guys. And, and that is Byron's game there too. So I do think you take on the characteristics of your gym, your teammates, your coach.
I say generally yes, but we still, I think in every gym, there's people who don't, and then they become really good at dealing with those people. We have people that I outweigh by 20 pounds that I can't smash them because they're so good at avoiding pressure, and they play bottom game. It's like, and I can't apply pressure to this person in a way to make them be in a bad situation, make them make some mistakes. They're good at avoiding that, and they're just kind of going against the grain of the typical person at the school, which gives them a lot of good practice. I think for me, when I was first starting out, I couldn't win the fight for top game, and so it was just so much easier to pull guard, and then I had some. It feels good to have some things to at least attempt. Arm bar triangle. Okay, that's what I'm going to try. And whether it works or not, I at least had an idea of what I was trying to do. I wasn't really comfortable playing top game because I just never really spent much time there. All the way through. I don't know. I remember being like guard guy, purple belt. I'm sure I had some top phases as blue and white belt that I liked it, but. It's just hard for me to get to it and then work on it. While I could get to guard anytime and then get to work pretty quickly. So I think it was, and I think it's common, just by necessity. If I'm playing something, I could either play bottom side control or guard because I'm not going to be playing top side control because I can't get there. And so I was kind of forced into that, and it didn't really bother me.
At what point do you think guys start to sort of figure it out and go their own way as opposed to just reacting what's forced on them? Like Byron, you're saying you got good at bottom game because you weren't going to win that top game battle, and we talked about how you go back and forth with your gym, but at some point you start to just persevere with what you want to do. You think that's purple, brown belt? Where was it for you, Byron?
I think it depends on the people in the room with you. I mean, you could easily. Picture a lot of gyms where a blue belt is like the top dog just because it's a newer gym, smaller gym, or it's just, jiu-jitsu hasn't really hit that area quite yet to where there's a bunch of black belts around. So purple belt, if he wants to play top game all the time, no problem. Or somebody who wrestled a lot doesn't have to play that a bottom game. They could pull that out and play top game at their will. I do credit the wrestlers that come in and they want to learn guard and they want to learn those, and that's really that always inspires me. It's like this person is going to understand jiu-jitsu. They're going to really pick it up because they're not just playing to the strengths. They're picking up an area where they could work on.
Yeah. So what you're saying is, when you get good enough that there's a significant number of students in class where you can dictate where the game goes, then you kind of have the freedom of choosing your own direction.
Yeah, and it might vary drastically from role to role, but I do feel that we get stuck in these things. Like, Gary likes to Kimura me from his guard, and if that's his goal when we start, he's obviously going to pull guard, and it would be I don't know. It's just if you have a something that you're working on in your head already, and it happens to be top or bottom, try to get to that, and it could be for everybody you roll with, or maybe just the people who are easier to, maybe put them on their back. You were able to work your top game with them. But I do feel, even if you're a guard person, that learning the top game really helps you understand the guard game as well. it's you get to see it from the other side of the fence. You know, you can understand. Like every time I do this, I get triangled, and then if you're playing bottom game and here's a triangle, because he did the same thing I was doing, and it just really kind of opens up your eyes from a different perspective. So go ahead.
Well, I was going to say you were talking about learning from one side of the coin and the other. So if you're going to a gym where you've sort of developed your bottom game first, because that was the only option you had, when you start to develop your top game, it's a good idea to sort of take with you things from your bottom game. If you did a lot of arm bars from the bottom, then when you start playing them out a little bit, maybe that's something you want to look at. If you did a lot of chokes from the bottom, then, some paper cutter chokes or something of that nature from the top would work too. So, you don't have to completely reinvent your game when you go from top to bottom or vice versa.
Just to get something going with, Gary, you're top, you're in, let's say, Joe's guard. Like a perfect flow of movement, where do you go from Joe's guard?
Well, I'm trying to pass. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. I want to pass that guard. The minute I pass, I want to now set up a Kimura. That's me. I want to put some pressure on him, make him turn away, and then I'm going to slowly ease the pressure off. I'm going to block his hips. I'm going to try to make him turn into me. And as he starts turning, I'm going to grab his chin, maybe look for a guillotine. When his hand comes down to his chin, I'm going to expose his arm for a Kimura and hopefully finish right then. That would be my ideal path to a finish from Joe's guard.
How about you, Joe?
How can Joe be in his own guard?
I don't know. How would you pass your own guard and then submit yourself?
Oh, man. We don't have enough time for that one, guys.
Well, you could videotape it for us.
We don't want to see that. Oh, man. Joe, so let's say you're in my guard. What would be like the ideal flow to get to where you want to be?
Well, let's not say it's your guard. Let's say it's somebody of comparable skill and athletic ability to me.
So my guard.
I wasn't going there, Gary. So
some other Gary's guard.
That's right. We know there's plenty of other Garys, and
there's
most
a lot.
of
Kasparov's guard.
Most of them that we talked about recently do not do jiu-jitsu. So let's say I'm going against one of those guys. Then when I'm inside his guard, I'm going to slap on an Americana. No,
neck crank.
Exactly.
Can't open her.
Oh man, this is derailed. No, I do a lot of low passing. My first option is to try and put my knee behind his tailbone and flare the other knee out, break the guard, and come up into a combat base. And from there, if I sometimes I'll go to half guard on purpose from there, and sometimes I'll end up by default if they've playing pretty good defense. If I go to half guard, I'll go for a Kimura, or I really, really like the Ezekiel choke from top half guard. And if I go to side control, I'll usually go knee on belly and then end up north-south with a Kimura or spinning around for the armbar.
I like it, Joe.
Thanks, man.
Byron, now it's your turn.
So I'm going to pass
the best for last.
Well, I'm going to pass a Gary's guard, not this particular Gary. Gary, I do have a lot of trouble passing your guard, and just a passing tip is people like when I roll with Gary, if I pass to my left, I have almost a no % chance of passing the guard. I get caught up, I get stuck, I have to back out, try it again. It just doesn't work for me. The only way I could possibly pass Gary's guard is if I pass to my right. Some of his offense is a little bit off for him, I think, and maybe the passes I do that direction work a little easier for me against him, and it's down to the realm of possibilities. But I don't remember the last time I've passed your guard to my left. I still try it occasionally because passing one direction for a little while and then switching is a great tool to have in the tool bag, because it's confusing to the person, and a lot of times when somebody commits to defending a pass one direction, they they are set up incorrectly to defend the pass from the other way. And so if you're able to blend those together, it does make passing a lot easier. And I can spend all day not passing his guard one direction, and then I could sometimes get a pass the other way, without being exhausted. But pass to a lot of times when I pass to the right, I'm passing to a half guard. I like a guillotine from there from the top, or at least threaten a guillotine from the top. A lot of times the threatened guillotine ends up with me passing. If I'm able to finish the pass and keep the guillotine, cool. If I just finish the pass and the guillotine's gone, I don't complain about that either. I like heavy side control. I like to put I was with my wife this morning, and I go, good pressure. She goes, should I put more pressure on? I said, yeah. I go, that's fine. And she squeezed harder, but I didn't. I go, I don't feel the need to no pressure. Like I could tell she was using, she's trying to, but it really matters where you're pressuring, and it's not necessarily fun, but pressuring like on the face, pushing their face away from you, that creates a lot of pressure. Pressuring on their ribs, which is ultimately where their lungs are, really cause them to feel that pressure versus just pressuring on someone's stomach or flat against their chest. Like those really don't bother very many people. So I like to, if I pressure, I like to squeeze their ribs with mine, and then my far elbow will squeeze their ribs together, kind of push everything together. That seems to generate quite a bit of pressure. I like head and arm chokes from there. I do like transition from mount, where I try to get a different guillotine from the mount. Or arm bars are good. My Kimura game, it definitely is lacking. So that's generally not on the table unless I'm in experimental mode or trying to expand what I'm doing with somebody who is of significantly less skill. Where even then, my Kimura still pretty much suck.
What I like is you're talking about you may be in half guard, and you're grabbing a guillotine, but it's really more for the passing. If everything comes out right, you're gonna make the guy gurgle and submit him. But it's a twofold process. You made it kind of sound like, hey, I grabbed the guillotine, not 100% sure if I'm getting it, but he's gonna have to defend, and sometimes that leads to a pass. And as soon as I pass, then I give him that crippling pressure and go from where I need to go there. And I think that's a lot of it. A lot of the times we may grab for a wrist, we may grab for the neck, we may, do whatever, but we're thinking a couple steps down the road where hey, if this actually works and, everything, works out right, we're going to finish with this, but I'm grabbing this to get their mind off of keeping me locked into half guard. Maybe, they'll drop a foot and, I can pop and, block the hips. And, so that's one thing I never understood at lower belts. And, I was always hoping that someday I would start getting to that level where, I may do something. It may look like I'm looking for a submission, but, I'll take the submission if it works. But I'm, looking a couple steps ahead. I'm hoping that, maybe I can pass the guard based off of him a little worried about his neck. And then, then I'm going to go down to whatever path I want to from once I pass the guard.
You're just talking about choking people made Joe cough.
Yeah, Joe, I think he tapped.
You got that joke sunk in tight, Gary.
Yep. So let's, slap hands, fist bump, and let's get it back at it.
Yeah, we've all experienced those passes where the person is applying so much pressure, so much discomfort. It's like, pass already, I'll deal with that.
Yeah.
And that's what I think of when I think of pressure passing. Yeah. Not fast, but just kind of grueling. And they want you to go ahead and finish before you're done.
Yep. One mistake I made, I don't know if it's necessarily a mistake, but it made me realize I got to work on frames and not let this happen. But sometimes I get too comfortable working my half guard. And I spent like a year always letting people start in side control to really work my escapes. And, my escapes got pretty good, I thought. But, boy, when I go against somebody who's really, really good and there's sometimes when people are passing my guard and kind of like what Joe was saying earlier, I may just let it happen, just for, I guess we'll call it convenience sake. I don't want to get tired. I feel like I can get out. But what happens to guys who have really good top pressure and top game, and this is why, I think it's so important, being a guard player myself, is man, sometimes those people pass, and I think I'm pretty good at escapes, and I'm going to get the underhook, and I'm going to pop out. Man, those people with the great pressure, great control, I'm stuck there for 10, 15 minutes till I break and end up giving them an arm or a neck and get tapped out. So, one thing I realized, and, I know we've talked about this a couple episodes back, probably 20 episodes back, is, I really need to work a lot harder on my frames when I do get in that position, because those guys who can pass and put that pressure on and make you move in ways you don't want to move, they're going to break you mentally, they're going to break you physically, they're going to take your heart, they're going to take your arm, they're going to take your neck, they're going to take whatever they want, and it's never fun to let that person pass and just be helpless and be a ragdoll for the next couple of minutes until I get submitted.
Guys, I was listening to both of you talk, and it kind of occurred to me that the most pressure you ever get is when somebody's using a multiplier. Like when I'm in just regular side control and let's say I'm not taking any grips or anything, I'm just applying pressure with my own weight, and even if I'm driving off my toes, that provides a little bit of pressure. But when we're talking about stack passes and over-under passes and stuff, you're putting the same pressure on, but you also got the person folded in half. And so you're compressing them as well as putting your body weight on. And sometimes from side control, you can get a gift wrap or something, and then you're putting pressure by having their shoulder across their chin, and you can pull on that arm. If you're in the gi, if you can get grips when you're in side control on the other side and use that to strengthen your lever, those are the type of multipliers that really make top pressure hard to deal with.
Joe, that made me start thinking about something. Is you were talking about getting folded up. It's never fun when, your legs are stuck behind your head, your torso's getting twisted one way. And, this may sound kind of stupid and maybe think I'm trying to be funny, but I was just thinking, you ever watch those like magician shows, and they always have a helper that they stick into a box that there's no way they should be fit into. And I was like, man, one of those people who've been doing that their whole life, they'd probably be pretty good on the bottom in jiu-jitsu. You could fold them in half, and it wouldn't even bother them. They would just be sitting there like, hey, nothing's happened. And you're just, trying to put more and more pressure, and that guy's just sitting there like nothing's happened. And he's going to break your will because it's not working for you.
And they're tough as nails, because I've seen them saw their legs clean off, and they seem to just sit there smiling. And then before you know it, they're back attached.
I'd like to give a warning to all listeners. Please do not attempt that stunt. Sawing your leg off stunt.
Not the pressure stunt.
Not the one putting yourself in a box.
Yeah, if Gary ever asked you to get in a box or a barrel or any such thing, just say no. You don't want to go there.
Yeah, because you may, if I put you in a barrel, you may end up going over Niagara Falls.
Break the wrist and walk away. That's some good points, though, Joe, about like a force multiplier. It could be, it matters where the pressure is, matters how it's being applied. But there'll be a day, if you're listening and you're fairly new to jiu-jitsu, there'll be a day when you could, if you weigh 150 pounds, it feels like you weigh 250 pounds. Like if
Byron, you are that guy.
Well, I'm getting closer to the 250 mark every day with all these desserts on me.
No, Byron, Byron's a little skinny guy with not much muscle. Actually, no muscle.
Yeah.
When he takes his shirt off, you actually try not to laugh.
People bring me nourishment, usually.
Yeah. I tell you, Byron gets you in side control. It's not fun. And Byron was talking about my guard hard to pass. And here I am telling you, I let people pass my guard. Ain't no way I'm letting Byron pass my guard, because when Byron does pass it, and he was kind of joking earlier because he passes it often, it's brutal. It's not fun at all. And if every day was like that, I probably wouldn't train jiu-jitsu as much as I do. Actually, I'd probably train more, because I would try to get better and not get put in those positions and try to figure out how to escape. But Byron, your pressure, for having such skinny little weakling arms is brutal.
Gary,
yes.
We're only going to be able to joke around about that for a few more months, because Byron's New Year's resolution was to do curls in the squat rack every day for 2019. So
Yeah.
how's that
I mean,
going, Byron? You getting them guns on yet?
There are so many haters at the gym. When I get on that squat rack and start curling, it's like, yeah.
Well, I mean, we also have another audio book. It's called Byron's ABC Workout. And, when I asked Byron, what's ABC stand for? Byron said, all bench and curls. That's all he does.
Good. Down to the fundamentals, Gary.
Solid fundamentals.
We're talking about just top control and pressure and that sort of thing. Gi and no gi. I think of, now I'd say like most of the time on the show, we don't even talk about one or the other. We just talk about grappling, and it's open for either one. And the same, like the way I described how I was going to pass guard and get to a winning position, exact same plan, gi or no gi. It doesn't, to me, it doesn't, I try not to overuse the gi because I get in situations where I don't get to train gi for a little while, and like I can't work on what I want to work on. So I know I strategically would be better off using the gi more often. In gi, it helped me a lot with the gi, but it's just I don't want to feel like I'm missing out when it's gone. So I just tend to not use it. I know I'm not as good of a gi player as I should be.
Yeah, with me being mostly a no-gi guy, well, just about only a no-gi guy, it's when I do put the gi on, I tell you, there are some pleasant surprises. Like when I'm trying to pass and, I can grab the pant legs and, post my weight down so they can't move their leg and move around to another side. So, I think sometimes the gi can bring me some extra grips, when I'm passing to, staple down a body part so it can't move. But when I'm on the other side, on the bottom and somebody's passing me, I'm not as well versed. So, it affects me probably even more in that situation.
Yeah, so interesting additional topic, Byron. I think when I'm in the gi, I use grips a lot. Like when I play closed guard, I really like the cross collar grip and sleeve grip, and the scissor sweep's usually my first option, and then a choke after that. But when I roll no gi and I end up in closed guard or pull guard, I don't have a moment where, oh, crap, the grips aren't there. I just sort of naturally go for the Kimura grip on the other arm and maybe a sit-up sweep or something and play a different game. So maybe that helps keep me well-rounded because I'm doing different things when I roll gi and when I roll no gi, or maybe it is keeping me from being the best at a certain game. I don't know which is better, but that's kind of the way I do it.
Or probably both. Probably like you are more well-rounded, but you're probably not the best you could be at gi specifically.
Yeah. Like if I only did gi, or if when I was in the gi, I did no gi type grappling, and I always went for my opponent's left arm for a Kimura or for a sweep in that direction, I would get better at that. But then I would lose some of the sweeps and chokes I like going the other direction. So I don't know. I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing for now.
Yep, keep on keeping on, Joe. With the gi on, I feel that I could generate more pressure. Do you guys, Joe? Do you agree to that?
My favorite pressure from top is knee on belly, and I get a good grip behind the neck on their collar and a good grip on their pants, and there's no way you can generate that pressure without the gi, I think. So I agree 100%, Byron.
So it's that's something to consider. I mean, if you I think it's also with some of the pressure passing, they're a little more secure with the gi. Your grip's a little easier to hold on to, and it's a little harder for the bottom person to disengage just because it's hard to disengage when somebody's holding on to your gi versus no gi, a little sweatier, push on them a little bit, create some space. It's not quite as difficult. So I would say overall, obviously knee on belly, like Joe pointed out, but overall I think pressure is more of a factor in the gi game. Or it's maybe it's just easier to generate.
Yeah, I could see that. It seems like it's easier you can generate more pressure with the holds, and you can deliver that soul stealing pressure that just really makes people just want to quit.
So what are some of the advantages of playing the top game?
Advantage of safe. It's a lot safer in the top game. You have mount, you have side control, without getting swept. You're not getting submitted from that position when you're on top. Just a lot more safety, a lot of, it's such an advantageous position. I mean, jiu-jitsu, self-defense, very advantageous, but, a lot of submissions open up, big control position. I don't know. I guess just the safety factor and the offensive, weapons available from those positions.
Okay. I'd like to replace your word safety for defense. Like, it doesn't sound like you're concerned about actually getting injured. It's just like you're not getting attacked when you're on the top.
Yeah,
like in side control.
I'm
right?
saying that, like, if I got mount, you're not throwing a triangle.
Yeah.
When I say safety, I'm talking about safety from submissions. I got side control on me. You're not gonna put me in a guillotine. If you do, you're probably gonna get von Flute. I feel like you don't waste as much energy. The guy on the bottom can't breathe. Plus, he's trying to move to escape. He needs to create a little bit of space where I'm not using as much energy, I don't feel, as the guy on the bottom. So my gas tank isn't, being dwindled down to the bottom as quick as the guy below me.
Yeah, you have the advantage of gravity, which is literally the whole world. Kind of a big deal.
Very big deal.
If you look at side control, it's largely the same thing from top or bottom, except for the person on top has like a space to move into. But the advantage of gravity is big. You look at the mount, like versus guard. If it was outer space, a mount is the guard. It's just the fact that you get to have a gravity on your side here on Earth, where most of us are grappling. No, I haven't confirmed. But there's I don't know for sure that nobody's listening to this in space. I would just assume that I would assume nobody has.
I just thought about that. That would be cool to be the first person who does jiu-jitsu in space or on another planet or even in a spaceship. I just think that would
zero gravity.
Has anybody tried it? I mean,
I want to say I've seen some skydive grappling.
Okay.
On YouTube. That's pretty close.
Yeah, they try to rip each other's parachutes off. It's a crazy.
I mean,
I don't know if they go that far, Byron.
I hope they're wearing a helmet, Byron.
Yes, because that helps. Yeah.
Yeah, and I've seen zero gravity skateboarding before in a military plane that was at the edge of our so I wouldn't be surprised if somebody did jiu-jitsu already, but if not, maybe we should get ahead of that, guys.
We'll start a GoFundMe to send Gary up there and do some grappling.
Yeah. Let's use me as the scapegoat.
No, it would be
might as well play another joke on me. You guys are always playing jokes on me. I am really upset with you guys right now, and I think I'm just going to leave this podcast right now. I'm just going to walk away out of this episode.
Oh, Gary. Well, let me sincerely apologize for hurting your feelers.
No, I'm not going to take that apology. I'll think about coming back next week, guys.
Well, okay, everybody listening, we're having a problem here on the show. If your name is Gary, we'd like you to apply for Gary's spot, because we clearly need a Gary, but we don't need to.
Yep, there you guys go again. I've just about had it. I think I'm out of here, guys.
Okay, now that Gary's gone, we can talk about him. One of the things I wanted to mention is the mental aspect of the top game. If you, I don't know, I think there's an advantage to to being on top. Like as if I'm playing top, I could feel like, okay, I'm in a ton of trouble from this guy's guard. That happens. You know, you kind of, okay, he's setting up a triangle. Okay, this is deep. Everything's tight. Okay, I'm in trouble. But I've never really like just felt that it was like a daunting task to prevent an onslaught from someone's guard. Like, I'm sure those guys exist, but generally, like an evenly matched thing, I'm not going to get mentally defeated trying to pass someone's guard. But it's happened, you know, someone's passing my guard. Okay, they pass, I recover. They slice through again. Like that could wear on somebody and make them just mentally frustrated to have, to be getting attacked constantly and getting their guard passed and having to struggle. I just feel I have at least when I play jiu-jitsu, I have a slight mental advantage. A lot of my jiu-jitsu is like kind of like a lighter speed, playful jiu-jitsu, but like in a competitive role where it's me and another upper belt and we're going pretty hard. Mentally, I'm doing better if I'm on the top, and that may be because I prefer it, but it just feels like I have like the wind in my sails.
Yep, I would agree with that. Now, I have rolled with a few guys that have such slippery guards that it can get frustrating even being on top. But for the most part, I would agree with you, Byron. Being on top's better. One thing that I think Gary touched on a little bit before he got his feelings hurt and left was talking about being safer on top, and I think he was talking mostly from an in the gym standpoint. But at its core, jiu-jitsu is a self-defense art, and I think at least half the people probably have put some value on that. And the mental aspect of not being on your back if you were to get attacked in some way, I think is huge. Plus the ability to disengage, is huge. So from a couple aspects, being on top is better.
Yeah, those are awesome. The other thing with the self-defense aspect, I think when I started getting a lot more confidence in my side control escapes, I really felt like, well, no one's going to just beat me up. Like against, some random guy on the street, I could always escape from a side control position. And, if I could do that, they're unlikely to get mounted, unlikely to even start a submission if I'm escaping quickly. And so, like, there's confidence in being able to play the top game, and then there's confidence in having quick escapes from bad positions and even just recovering guard. But I don't know. I think that there's... So if you look at the point system with jiu-jitsu, they give you 2 points for a takedown. And so, or they give you 2 points for a sweep. So in a way, they're rewarding the top players for that. They don't penalize guard pullers. There's a million different tournaments where things happen, but overall, you could if I pull guard against Joe, no points exchanged. But if Joe was able to take me down and ended up in my guard, even though it's the same position, he's getting 2 points for that. So to me, it does show that there's an intrinsic value to being on top. If I'm able to sweep Joe and end up on top, even if I end up in his guard, 2 points for that move. So there is, in which you would consider a neutral position, guard, there is an underlying value placed in the point system. I think it's justified. I mean, if I sweep Joe and I end up in Joe's guard, I'm not sweeping Joe to mount or to side control. I'm sweeping from guard to guard. They still give me 2 points for that because that is an advantage for somebody, and it's the advantage for me. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so you, me, and Gary are just three guys who've been doing jiu-jitsu for a while, expressing our opinion that the top game has a lot of advantages. But as you're talking, I'm thinking that the best minds of jiu-jitsu were the ones that designed the system as we practice today, designed the competition and the point systems. And so, yeah, you get awarded points for sweeping or taking your opponent down and ending up on top. You get more points when you take mount, which is a more dominant position, and you take even more points when you get back, which is the most dominant position, especially from the angle that Gary kept coming in at with not taking any punishment, not taking any risk. If you get your opponent's back and you can maintain that position, you're not likely to take any punches, kicks, or submission attempts. So yeah, it was smarter guys than us that made this assertion first.
Yeah, that's a good point, Joe. But I'm not saying there are many world champions that go out there, pull guard, and get the job done. That's just good guard work. It happens all the time, and you could even see it by different weight classes. Some prefer to play bottom versus top, but there's definitely some values to pulling guard, and there's values to being on top. And it's kind of funny that the weight alone dictates how they play, because we're all playing under the same rules. You'll see heavyweights fight for top position for the entire match. You'll see two guys in the lower weight division both want to pull guard under the same rule set. I mean, it's kind of weird if you think about it. Like, nobody's getting penalized for pulling guard necessarily, but that the lighter weight division seem to want to do that more often. And in the heavyweights, they know if they end up on their back, they're going to be in a lot of trouble, and so they fight hard to play that top game. And that's one thing you could do if you're wanting to compete, is look at your weight class, look at your age group and your skill level, and watch some matches from that, and see what people are wanting to do. Odds are they're going to want to do the same thing, even if they're not the same people. There's kind of trends that happen, and they're kind of dictated a lot by just the weight classes and ages alone. Man, without Gary here, hey, I'll just say this real quick. Stay tuned to the very end. We'll air what happened with Gary, because right now it might seem like he just left in a fit of rage, and we'll clear the air on that Gary. But I'm glad Joe has written the article this week, not Gary.
Yeah, otherwise we'd be stuck and lost, right?
Yes, we would. We'd be pushing that bell and not hitting the right part of the wall at all. That doesn't make any sense. Why would that make sense, Joe?
It would not. So if you were with us last week, you remember we talked about Gary's article, and it was written by request of Byron, who sent both Gary and I a picture and said, hey, write an article about this. And in the picture, there's a little button, which I assume rings a bell. And on one side of the button, there's a sign that you can only half read that I assume says, please ring for assistance. And on the other, there's a sign that says, please ring this bell for attention, and an arrow pointing the wrong way. And Gary wrote a really good article about misdirection, which was great. I took a simpler approach, and I figured I was smart enough to realize when they said ring this bell for attention that they were talking about the bell that I could see and not the imaginary bell where the arrow was pointing at. And I wrote an article from the standpoint of sometimes you walk into a business, there's nobody up front, they're all back in the shop, and there's a sign that says ring bell for service. If you don't see that sign or you don't act upon that sign, you can do all kinds of things to try and get somebody to come out and help you, and it's not going to work. You can wave your arms and jump around. Nobody can see you. You can holler. They can't hear you from in the back. But if you ring that bell, you'll hear a loud buzzer going off back in the shop, and someone come up and help you. And I likened that to when you're playing jiu-jitsu and you're going against a really good defensive player, and maybe you get side control, but they're not opening anything up. You can't get the far arm. You can't get grips on the collar. They're keeping their chin tucked. So you can do all kinds of things to try and advance your game. But sometimes there's just a bell you got to ring. And in this case, it might be knee on belly. You abandon the side control attacks that you're launching. You pop up the knee on belly and you put some pressure on. And maybe the far side hand will come on your knee, and the elbow will flare out as they try and push your knee off, and there you go, you got an attack. or if you got somebody in your guard and they're keeping their elbows in tight, they're keeping their posture up. You got to develop some timing and understand how to pull the elbows out. And you do everything on time with the right technique, and they're going to plant the hand, they're going to fall forward. But if you don't know that, you can do all kinds of gyrating from the bottom, and you're not going to accomplish anything. So that was the direction I took at Byron. What do you think, man?
Yeah, you make some good points in that one, and I do check out, if you hadn't checked it out, check out the article, because the picture helps make sense of what he's talking about. But there could be times in jiu-jitsu, and typically it's, for me, I've studied up on something. Let's just say I've studied on head and arm chokes. I'm doing a lot of research. I grabbed my wife. Hey, let me try this real quick. I got a different way to do this, and maybe before class I run through a couple things, and then I get side control and I want to set it up, and it's just not there. I can't get the arm in the right position, or maybe I can't maintain side control, or something isn't right about it, and I could just work so hard for this one thing, when oftentimes I'd be better off to just switch gears a little bit and do something else, and not run into that brick wall over and over again.
The help's not there. It's not there. So you gotta find that button and push it.
Yeah,
and go from there.
It's been a little while, but I was in Home Depot, and I wanted to get an extra key made for my house, and nobody was around, and there wasn't even like a bell for service or anything. And so I start looking at the machine, and there's directions on the machine. I'm like, I think I'm gonna at least try this. And sure enough, I get that machine fired up, and people came over to help me.
Yeah, that's where I thought you were going with that. I've been in the same boat before, so
it's like if you kind of ring bell for service, or just meander back to the warehouse, and they'll be shocked that you showed up, but they'll help you.
So see, that's just it when it comes to the article. When you're grappling and you find yourself in a position with a stagnant or a really tight opponent, maybe good defense, there's no sign that points to the bell to ring. You got to know that. That's what you got to figure out about jiu-jitsu, is how do I make my opponent move? If you're bottom mount, you got to get the timing and the technique of that bump and bridge. You got to get that right, because that's the key to making your opponent move. If you can make a move, then you can create an option.
Yep, that's a good article, Joe, and I appreciate you rising to the challenge of being sent an image and writing an article based on that. Very impressive.
Well, doing the best we can, me and Gary.
Yeah, check out last week's episode /article, and we covered Gary's in that. I want to thank our Patreon supporters for their support via the Patreon outlet. If you want to send us some support, go to our Patreon link on the show notes. Most supporters are pledging $1 per episode, and the money goes and helps the show. And we're hoping to do some pretty cool things in the future with the show and the podcast and the website and all this stuff. If you are a Patreon supporter, I will mail you out a 5-inch BjjBrick gi patch and a sticker as like tokens of appreciation for you, because you guys are literally the biggest fans that we have, are the ones that are supporting us on Patreon. We have a lot of people who listen every week. That's great. If supporting the show is at all difficult for you financially, just keep listening, keep training. Those are the things we want you to do. But if you're in a position in life where an extra $1 a week could go to the show, man, we would appreciate that greatly. I have scoured the list looking for a Gary. We don't have any Garys as Patreon supporters. We do have a Greg. So I want to give a special shout out to Greg this week for supporting us on Patreon. Thank you so much for your continued support on Patreon.
Yeah, we appreciate that, guys. And make sure and check us out on social media. We got a YouTube channel. Byron's pretty active there. We got a Facebook channel. We try and post something you might find comedic or inspiring. There's some content on there. Check us out. Make a comment. Give us a like. And download our app. It's the easiest way to get the podcast every week. So you can find it in the iTunes Store or the Google Play Store.
Yep. Last week we had a question from a listener. Send in questions, BjjBrick@gmail.com. That would be kind of a nice segment to be able to answer questions on a regular basis. In order to do that, we need some questions. So send them in at BjjBrick@gmail.com, or you can send us a message through Facebook, and hopefully remember. A lot of times we'll just respond right away and just, hey, try this or whatever. But what we need to be doing is bringing those questions on the show and covering them in some sort of a mailbag style of segment. And the best I can do right now is we had a comment on a YouTube video not too long ago. Good podcast. You guys can make it better, though, by not going on and on about your jokes.
Yeah, we resemble that comment.
Yes. We work very hard to make that happen. And thank you for appreciating part of our podcast.
So he sent us a private message later, said, I edited out all the corny jokes of your podcast and then listened to it. It was a great 15 minutes of content.
Yeah, this one would be tough. Usually we have an interview where there's less jokes, but the last episode of the month would be very difficult. But without Gary, we're a lot more serious. Gary?
Okay.
Okay, let's. I'll air a little clip right now explaining really what happened to Gary. We'd like you to apply for Gary's spot because we clearly need a Gary, but we don't need to.
Yep, there you guys go again. You know, I've just about had it. I think I'm out of here, guys.
Well, Joe, now that the top game has left,
man, I'm really sorry that you're offended by that, Gary.
I'm not here anymore.
He's one of those snowflake guys.
I'm really not mad at these guys. I just have somewhere I have to go right now. And so
it is 2:20, isn't it? Okay.
Yeah.
Man.
Adios.
Time went by quick.
And I will see you guys next week, but these guys will finish the show off without me, so I know it's probably not going to be as good as it was
Gary,
previously.
so you got to tell them, you're not mad at us?
Oh, I'm mad at you.
You got a game. Well, you get back with revenge. Okay, go have fun at the game. We forgot, man. We started a little later than we thought, and then we got confused with all this
I think
stuff.
you should cut the last part out, because that's what I was trying to do, but you guys didn't get it.
I didn't realize the time had already passed.
Let's just close the show, and then Byron can edit it and make it work.
Gary, you got to go, don't you? I mean, you got to walk out the door now.
Yeah, I really do got to go. But
Gary,
I was thinking you guys could just use that and pretend like I got mad at you. Cut out the last part and pretend like I left. That's what I was planning on doing. I thought that would be good. But yes, sorry guys, I really do got to cruise on out of here.
Well, peace out, Gary. Maybe you'll be on next week. Maybe we'll have a different Gary.
There you go.
Right.
You never know who will
man.
fly. Yep. Take care, guys. Bye.
Okay, now that Gary's gone, we can talk about him.
Okay, man, the show's never going to be the same.
I can't believe it's already been. Okay, so what happened was, and it was a little confusing, is we had plenty of time, but some of the time kind of got wasted waiting for somebody to update their Skype, Gary. And so, yeah. Anyways.
Yeah. Well, and then we kept getting derailed by corny jokes, Gary. So, yeah, the show went longer than we expected.
It's not even that long of a show, but we had an hour and a half built in, and then we didn't get to start until, well into that. One other thing I wanted to mention is the mental aspect of the top game. All right, well, that's as close as I think we get to doing a prank on you guys. As Gary quitting the show, he had a ball game to get to, and he kind of. I didn't realize that the time had gone that far. Did you, Joe?
No, I thought it was another corny joke by Gary when he started talking about he was going to leave us.
And then he didn't. Like, if he would have hung up, we would have figured he could have texted us. He could have just hung up and sent us a text, but he didn't do that. It's hard to. I'm not good at hanging up on somebody either. But anyway, we look forward to bringing you guys another show next week. Until then, get on the mats, stay sweaty, my friends.
And don't forget to stay on top.
Thank you for listening. I hope you find the time today to roll. After all, The best way to get better at Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is to do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.